follow-up to the horror classic Candyman, 1992, that takes us back to the now gentrified streets of Chicago, where the legend came to life. Get ready to relive the adventure as we recap the story of horror film today, Candyman, production year 2021. In 1977, a mother instructs her son to do laundry in the Cabrini Green project. When he enters the laundry room, he walks by some police officers. Sitting by himself in the room, the boy listens to the sound of a man humming and then observes as the man appears from a gap in the wall with a hook instead of a hand. The boy yells loudly and the police quickly enter. Today, Cabrini Green is gentrified. Troy Cartwright is introducing his boyfriend Grady Greenberg to Troy's sister Brianna and her boyfriend Anthony McCoy at their new apartment. While present, they converse about local urban myths, such as the legend of Helen Lyle in the vicinity. A student was seeking a story about Cabrini Green, but ended up losing her sanity and taking a baby before a group retrieved the child, leading to Helen walking into a massive fire and perishing. Later, Anthony searches for information about the topic Troy mentioned. While Anthony is out the following day, he comes across William Burke, who informs him that the police presence in Cabrini Green was not as prominent before more white residents started moving in. Burke informs Anthony about the local folklore of Candyman, a frightening character in the neighborhood. As a child, Burke first encountered Candyman when he was introduced to him by Sherman Fields, a local man with a hook hand who would offer candy to children. He played the boy in the opening scene. Sherman was the main suspect when a young white girl discovered a razor blade in her Halloween treat. Burke's unintentional actions led the police to discover Sherman when he yelled, resulting in the police viciously assaulting Sherman until he was beyond recognition. Later on, when additional razor blades were found in candy, it was too late for people to realize that Sherman was not guilty. According to the legend, if someone says Candyman's name 5 times while looking in the mirror, he will appear and take his next victim. Anthony snaps some pictures around the area and gets stung by a bee on his right hand. Anthony is an artist and has an exhibit at a gallery where Brianna is employed. The mirror acts as a challenge for viewers to gaze at their own reflections and say Candyman's name 5 times. Anthony encounters Finley Stevens, a critic who disapproves of his and other artists' attempts to express strong opinions on societal issues. Irritated, Anthony loses his temper with a guest who asks a condescending question, then confronts Brianna's colleagues Clive Privler and Jerica Cooper. Clive suggests that Anthony only got into the gallery because of Brianna, but Anthony retaliates with a comment before walking out. Brianna attempts to console Anthony at their residence. Meanwhile, Clive and Jerica attempt to meet up at the gallery once it is closed. Standing before the mirror, Jerica jokingly utters Candyman 5 times. Shortly after, Candyman materializes in the mirror and cuts Jerica's neck. Despite trying to escape, Clive is unable to avoid being killed by Candyman, who drags his lifeless body next to Jerica. Brianna later finds Clive and Jerica's bodies the next morning. This triggers a flashback to when she was a child and witnessed her father jump out the window to his death. When the news reports that their bodies were found in front of Anthony's display, he has a dazed, milky look in his eyes, before simply stating that he's happy he got mentioned, which both Brianna and Troy are disgusted by. The bee sting on Anthony's hand becomes increasingly infected as time passes, necessitating the use of a bandage. Later, he attends an interview at Finley's house, during which he talks about his opinions on the gentrification in the neighborhood, and more broadly. He challenges Finley to go and say Candyman's name. When she heads to the bathroom, Anthony is lured outside the apartment where he gazes into the mirror and seems to witness Candyman as his own reflection, with his hook exactly where Anthony's hand is placed. Anthony departs as the unseen spirit of Candyman assaults Finley in the bathroom, cutting her throat and pulling her face along the window. Anthony begins conducting further investigations on Candyman and Helen Lyle. In the library, he reviews recordings made by Helen describing her experiences and discoveries in Cabrini Green. While riding in the elevator, Anthony notices a sweet falling to the ground, but ends up cutting his finger on a hidden razor blade inside. Once again, he is frightened by the sight of Candyman before he runs away. Anthony revisits Burke and discusses how he perceives the victims of Candyman and incorporates them into his artwork. Burke elaborates that Candyman symbolizes numerous victims of racial discrimination, with the first instance dating back to the late 1800s, involving a black man named Daniel Robitaille, who was employed as an artist for a white family and developed a romantic relationship with the eldest daughter. Following her pregnancy, her father discovered the situation and ordered a group of people to go after Robitaille, resulting in them inflicting torture, cutting off his hand, smearing honey on him to lure bees, and ultimately lighting him on fire. Brianna views Anthony's artwork and worries about his mental health. Anthony breaks the mirrors when she attempts to utter Candyman's name, forcing her to leave and seek refuge with Troy and Grady. In another location in a private school, a cluster of adolescent girls congregate in the washroom to chant Candyman's name, following one of them witnessing Anthony's artwork at the exhibit. One of them leaves prematurely, while another girl remains seated in a stall during the continuation of the activity. Following the lack of any development, the girls attempt to exit the bathroom, only to find that the door is locked. One of the girls returns to the mirror, while the other girls can only listen to the sounds of Candyman's hook piercing her skin. The girl in the stall can only see a blurry reflection of her classmates being killed in a small mirror. As Anthony's physical and mental health decline, he goes to see his mother, Anne-Marie. He begins discussing Candyman and his knowledge of Cabrini Green. He understands he is the baby that had been taken many years ago, but Anne-Marie clarifies that she thought Helen had abducted him. However, she was actually rescuing him from Candyman, as he had apparently chosen Anthony for a sinister reason. Anthony departs, sensing that his mother deceived him and withheld information. Just as Anthony and Brianna seem prepared to reconcile, they are both taken captive by Burke. He brings them to a dilapidated church and makes a fake distress call to the police. Burke sees Candyman as a representation of racial injustice and believes Anthony, whose body is partially decomposed, will become the new version of Candyman, following in the footsteps of Daniel Robitaille and Sherman Fields. Burke cuts off Anthony's right hand and then attaches the hook. Brianna manages to release herself right as the police begin to show up. Even though Burke chases after her, Brianna fatally wounds him with a pen. Anthony collapses into her embrace as he becomes weaker. The authorities entered suddenly and killed him with gunfire. Brianna is arrested by corrupt police officers. The chief officer attempts to convince her to twist the narrative to either blame Anthony as the only culprit for the murders, or to portray her as an accomplice. Understanding the cops' intentions, Brianna requests to see herself in the mirror in return for complying with their wishes. She calls for Candyman, and a police officer comes out of the building with his throat cut. Anthony has become the embodiment of Candyman and continues to murder the rest of the cops. The main police officer exits while Anthony chases after. Brianna gets out of the car and sees Anthony murder the officer. A group of bees devour Anthony, causing him to transform into Robitaille. As additional law enforcement personnel show up, Robitaille makes a simple plea to Brianna: spread the word to everyone. And showing this story ends here. Appreciate a subscribe, and please remember to like. Thanks for watching.